I've come out for my morning walk before trying to write today. Thought it might help get me unstuck on the blog, the posts that I'm working on. I've been feeling a bit stuck with the blog post that I'm working on. I titled it Tacit Knowledge in the Information Age, and I was going to argue that in the information age, tacit knowledge is becoming even more valuable and more critical. And then I started drifting into the gig economy and the impact of contract workers. And then I realised, well, the information age has been around for decades, and what I should be really thinking about if I want to be forward-looking is the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. So the impact of augmenting workers with and integrating workers more with artificial intelligence, with machines that perhaps tap into biology and biological feedback, machines that think and act more like humans. The other aspect that was feeling dated was that the key story I'd used was about an example from a manufacturing environment, an example from Coca-Cola Amatil, and I want to use those Coca-Cola Amatil examples less and more recent examples in my work. So I'm having to step back from it. I'm actually ditching everything I've written. I'm just putting it all aside and starting afresh. And I've had some interesting discussions on Twitter 2 days ago about tacit knowledge and AI, and I asked the question whether artificial intelligence could possess tacit knowledge. I want to go back through those tweets, but before I start getting anything else in, I want to start getting some stuff out. And what I realised on my walk this morning is that I want to come at it from the perspective of who am I trying to talk to here, and it's always trying to talk to business leaders. And what is their context? What is their need or pain points? So maybe even a persona might be a good place to start. Anyway, I'm going to get off the computer and into the notebook. I've got myself a cup of coffee. I've often started blog posts in the past by just sitting down and doing a bit of a brain dump about a topic, and then I'll highlight something that turns out to be a key point and build on that. So I'm going to find a blank space and just get out of my head everything that I'm thinking about this topic at the moment. That was really interesting for me and very useful. Within the space of about 20 minutes, I started thinking about, well, what's something I can focus on in this topic? And I thought the idea of the augmented worker, where machines are increasingly augmenting what people do, and they have to learn how to work with those machines and technologies. So what do people need to do in this context? Learn how to work with the augmentation. I've quickly settled into the idea of putting a persona together and looked at, to adapt to working with augmentation, what do people need to think, feel and do? From there I asked the question, well, so what does this mean for business leaders? And this idea about human-centred design and the experience, human experience, not just customer experience, but employee experience, and that in order to provide a great customer experience, you need to provide a great employee experience. So why is employee experience important, and what's my message then to leaders? And I think it's about figuring out what role you want people to play in this era of augmentation and finding out ways to support your people and also to connect your people. I still want to work in the idea that tacit knowledge is more and more important, because what can be codified will be automated, will be given to machines, so that more and more people are working with higher order skills and tacit knowledge. I'm really surprised with how quickly that kind of came together for me, and really heartened by the way several themes are starting to emerge in at least my thinking, if not visible in the public face of my work at this stage. And that whole idea, that human-centred design approach, human experience, like it's just getting more and more natural all the time for me to use personas, which I wouldn't have done a year ago. So nice to reflect on the progress in my thinking and ways of working in that way.
We have Bella. We brought her home from the vet, and she's just from the pet store, and she's just hopped into her playpen, and she's having a blast exploring, isn't she?
Hello.
So so sweet, so little. 8 weeks old. She is a Yorkshire Terrier cross.
She's less than 1 kilo.
Yep, Yorkshire Terrier cross with a poodle. Very, very cute.
Oh, she's so happy. It's so good.
She doesn't look at all scared, does she? Just curious.
She loves that map.
Good. She better use it.
Oh, gotcha! Gotcha! Hey!
So in between patting that beautiful, gorgeous bundle of a little dog, I am doing some work on the Learning and Performance Institute Capability Map project. We're now at the point where the capability map is basically written. There's a little bit of tweaking left, and we're getting ready for launch. So setting it up on the technology platform, working up the promotional campaign. So the steering group meeting number 3, which was held 2 nights ago, yeah, it was 2 nights ago, was really an update for the members, and I will be using that as my daily dispatch today. There's one aspect that I'm really interested in that wasn't part of the original plan but emerged out of steering group meeting discussions over the past 2 sessions. The map is going to be launched a little later than originally anticipated. It's going to be launched in October, although it will be announced at Learning Live in September. And the reason it's being launched later is that it will be set up on an upgraded platform. The Lexonis platform is being used with some additional functionality, and that will just take a little bit longer for it to be set up. And what we're going to do is have a period we're calling the consultation period, which we run over about 16 weeks. Those dates aren't firm dates, but it'll be October to January next year. And we're going to ask people who are using the capability map to give us some additional feedback and suggestions to improve it, with the final release in February. So we'll really be looking for, I guess, usability and understandability, if that's even a word, understandability. So clarity of the concepts, the explanations, the descriptions with people who are using them and their suggestions. We haven't had time to do a lot of user acceptance testing, although we have had a large number of people involved in working groups to write the skill descriptions. So this will just give us a little bit of time to settle it down and to tweak it a little before sort of saying this is now the hard launch and the full release of this version of the capability map. And what I'm going to work on now is a short feedback survey, and the feedback survey is from people who are involved in the steering group or the working groups. We've got around 50 people all up who played a role in one of those groups, and it's really about the process that we use to do the refresh. We'll be doing another refresh in several years. The plan at this stage is 2020, so it's almost like a part of the post project review process and lessons learned gathering. I've just gotten off a Zoom call with someone in my network, a colleague, Rachel Burnham. Rachel's someone who I would regard as part of my personal learning network, but I've never actually met her, although we do interact quite often on Twitter and on Snapchat. Rachel's doing a research project on how people keep up to date and how they manage information, and she wanted to have a discussion with me on that as part of the research. What was interesting was to get Rachel's feedback on my processes and her insights, what she noticed that was perhaps different to other people. And one comment she did make was how quickly I moved to sense making, that it's not just about capturing information but doing something with it. And we teased out a number of the ways in which I make sense of information. The notes I took in my little scratch pad are the idea, firstly, that I use the information at different times. So I circle back to it. I'll capture things either from the internet, from conferences, from conversations. I mostly capture them in Evernote, and then I'll circle back and reuse the information or look at it at different times. And often I'll come back with a different question. So for me, applying the information is essential for sense making, as well as conversations, whether they're online conversations, Zoom calls, real life conversations with people through my work. That's important for my sense making. And the other thing she noticed was the way I work both digitally and analog.
It's interesting, I have tried whilst I've been travelling to work predominantly digital, but now that I've got the luxury of having a bit more space for paper and notebooks and so on, I'm really enjoying working in a more analogue way, you know, physically writing things, drawing pictures, using colour. I haven't yet in the last week and a half printed anything out and worked with it, but that's often really useful to start making connections and seeing patterns and being a bit more physical with the information, drawing models and pictures. So just interesting to see how I work and how I make sense of stuff.